trust you. Well, you can't hear me. We're supposed to trust you in ruining the future of our seafront yet again, but a bit further on down the road. This is the only royal harbour in the whole of the bloody England, right? Only on our doorstep, when we've got so many people that are poorly with cancer around this area, with bad asthma. What are you shaking your head at? Do you even live here? Do you understand? You don't have a clue about your own website. How are you supposed to understand what we are already putting up with? What we have already lost?
Pass it on, that's it, yes. Claire?
I'm interested in what you're putting forward, but I find it difficult to understand in terms of just showing us a plan. We have no sense of 3 dimensions, height, whether it be chimneys or anything like that. I realise you're not putting your proposals in yet, but earlier on in the meeting it was suggested that this is a public consultation. We're being consulted on very little information whatsoever. And following on from what Candy has said, I believe that I'm living in a town that has fantastic tourist potential, as well as a really fantastic... by most of the people in the town. That's the Ramsgate Sands and the Western Undercliff. And we're trying very hard to join this up so that when people come here they've got a whole spread of seafront to participate in. This will provide a block, a future block on that site. The other thing that you have raised tonight is the business of dredging. I had assumed there might be some planning gain in your operation, whereby you would keep the harbour clear for us. That's very kind of you. But that is our sand from our beaches. Who's going to put the sand back on the beaches, both on Western Undercliff and on Ramsgate Sand, so that we've actually got a seaside resort to come to?
Yes, answer the sand. Yes, answer any question you like.
Right. On the question of the dredging, it is very costly. If you go on through the Freedom of Information Act, I think you can find out just how much it costs.
Not for DSCN you work, they never answer.
Oh, I can assure you they have done. Well, I'm sorry, but somebody has been answered. Some doctor made an inquiry, and this is how I got my information. And what we've looked at is the cost of what you've been paying so far as taxpayers, because you're all paying towards that. And okay, can I please answer the question? Oh, I see.
Environmental services and does ground.
Please, if the lady there wants to ask a question.
Excuse me, you were asked a question earlier to which you didn't give an answer. Oh, by the way, my name is Anne, and I'm new resident here in Ramsgate. I'm coming over from the other side, just across. I'm coming from Belgium. And where I live, we used to have a cement factory, which had to close down because of the production in Eastern Europe. And now they've been trying, they're also recycling, doing aggregate recycling, other things. And I can assure everybody that the pollution around is extremely important. And then you didn't answer the question, what will happen to the wastewater? What will happen when all those boats are coming and half, because of the bad weather, the wind, half of the product that you're coming in, the cement and all that, is getting blown away, goes into the sea, goes into Pegwell Bay, which is a reserved area. What will happen to the environment?
Could I just make a couple of points?
Of course, answer the question, yes.
There was an issue about there's only a two-dimensional plan. Most of the plant that is involved in this will be open. If you look at what Brett's have got, they've got some plant down there because the concrete batching is already there. And as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been any environmental concerns. They don't actually produce the cement. They import the cement and they use it in the concrete batching process. So that is sort of open plant, as you can see. And certainly there'd be no intention to have a cement making factory, because that is really
I'm
dangerous.
not talking about the cement making, but how will they transport the cement? Loose or in bags?
Well, it happens at the minute. The cement is already brought in by Brett's, and there is an intention to keep using that. You'll have to ask Brett's that, but I'm not aware of any environmental problems over the past 5 years that they've been doing it.
All right, sir?
About the water.
Let the gentleman ask his question, please.
Well, I'm really not...
a question. What happens to the wastewater, please?
Right. Can you let this chap answer the question? And then we'll go back on and see if they want to answer questions on wastewater. If they can't or won't, then you must take that into account when your opposition to this particular application, if it ever transpires, comes in.
Civil.
This gentleman.
Well, I haven't actually got a question. I've just got an observation. And to back up what these ladies said earlier, I actually despair that we're even having this meeting. There's councils here and people like our council. Why are we looking to Ramsgate to an industrial unit next to our Royal Harbour? We've got the most fantastic town, with the most fantastic potential. It's no good you leaving back in that. This should not even be an issue for Ramsgate. They're taking our airport away. I've watched the degeneration of Ramsgate now for the last 40 years. And now the next proposal is, what with the possibility of Manston going, is putting a recycling plant right next to the Royal Harbour. How many people are going to want to put their yachts in there from other areas and want to berth in there? It is the most fantastic harbour. We've got Manston the jewel in the crown, and the harbour is the next big jewel in the crown. I can't believe that this council are even allowing this to even be considered. It's absolutely outrageous. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Come the election, they're all out.
Well, that'll be the democratic decision, and if that's the case, that's the case. The council, can I just answer that? The council here this evening is Ramsgate's Town Council.
Any council.
No, well, the council here this evening is Ramsgate's Town Council. This particular if I was finished, this particular application, this particular company, made a presentation to Ramsgate's Town Council at an open planning meeting. Only 2 residents were present. Only 2 residents were present at that meeting. I thought it was therefore appropriate that all the residents, everybody who's interested, should be offered the opportunity to listen to this particular application. Do not run away with the idea that I or my fellow councillors support this application, because I personally don't. In fact, my view, personally, is it should be a yacht maintenance area. A large yacht maintenance area. However, this is what the applicants are allowed to consult with the local planning authority about future planning applications. Potential. They will then submit, if they ever do, and I don't know if they're going to, an application. Then that will go, in my view, should go to the full public planning committee to actually be determined. That's what should happen. Done.
Well said.
No, I'd like to first of all thank Ramsgate Town Council actually for bringing this. So thank you very much for bringing it, and thank you, Irene, for actually thinking about what. I don't know if it's allowed. Would it be possible to ask a quick question to the audience?
No.
No? All right, quick question. Put your hand up if you want it. Put your hand up if you don't.
Councillor Baker,
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. For those of you that don't know, I'm Bob Bayford. I'm leader of the opposition on Thanet District Council and supporter of Manston. This is a point of clarification, because in answer to an earlier question...
Can't hear.
It's like that bloke that used to do the Northern Clubs, isn't it? You know, in answer to an earlier question about how much land you might want, you said that if you're going to do anything else, you would need more land, and that would mean you'd have to negotiate new heads of terms. That suggests that you already have agreed heads of terms with Thanet Council. Could you actually say whether that's right or not, please?
Go on, Bob.
Thank you. At the moment, there are draft proposals which Thanet Council, as in their property role, have considered. There is no definitive area yet defined. There are no definitive heads of terms yet defined. In fact, very little is definitive. What we've tried to do is ensure that everybody is aware that there is a proposal on the table so that we can get the reaction that we're getting tonight, that we can get the views from the Environment Agency, and we can get the views of other consultees, so that before anything definite is proceeded with, the O'Regan group have actually got a feel for what the local population thinks. Yeah, thank you to the Town Council for arranging that, because for allowing us to approach them and agreeing to actually let us do this consultation. A lot of companies just turn up in Thanet, they don't do any consultation, and they tread all over you. At least the O'Regan group are doing the consultation, and you're getting the opportunity before anything definite is established to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ralph.
Right. A few points have already come up. Number one was the water. I don't know if you remember when we had the fire in the library. It burnt down and the water system could not cope with the fire, and they took the water out of the harbour to put the fire out. Yeah. If your water's that intensive, then there's not enough water supply to cover that. Number two, if there's any gases or anything or any bad air coming off what you're producing, we don't want that either. The increased traffic that's going to be put forward is going to be horrendous for Ramsgate. There's so many things wrong. What we need to do, as Councillor Campbell said, boat building. Ramsgate has done boat building and boat repairs for 250 years, and that's where we should be going. And there'd be far more jobs and far more money for Ramsgate if we went in the boat building direction. Thank you.
Well said, Ralph.
Chairman, if I could just come we can't.
Well done.
I can't say exactly how much water. What I can say is that the intention is there will be water tanks on site, that the water will be used and recycled on a daily basis. And it's got to be done extremely carefully, because none of this water can be allowed to escape into the marine environment, because you're surrounded by an internationally important nature conservation area. So it doesn't matter whether, actually, you know, sometimes you can't put clean water in because that affects the marine environment. So the whole system will be self-contained and recyclable.
What about the air side?
John Davis, local resident. Given that your core operation is in recycling aggregate, I wonder if maybe some of the councillors may be aware of this, but if you'd like to comment on the fact that the currents have undermined the pad that should never have been built in the first place, and there's a very real danger of a large section of the area that you're proposing to occupy actually falling into the water.
Jocelyn McCarthy. Question to Doug Brown.
Yes.
Doug Brown, who is ex-landing officer. When this proposal came about, why didn't you sort of said to the council that there is no static right for an industrial unit to be on the port? You have planning, the council has planning rights to build on it, but not to put an industrial unit on the port. Secondly, why did the council pass this to the town council? I mean, the town council is not the owner of the port. The town council is here to sort of manage the town and everything like that. Thanet District is the owner of the port. So why did the Thanet District Council call a consultation meeting with the residents of Ramsgate? Instead, they've left it to the town council. Now this is totally unfair.
I think I can explain some of this. Basically, I'm just a consultant. I have nothing to do with that council now. My advice to the O'Regan group was that they needed to get advice and they needed to consult. Therefore, we went to the council planning officers and we have received pre-application advice that covers the issue that Jocelyn's just raised. And we also chose to go to the town council because the town council have the ability, which I don't think the district council do, to have implemented this meeting in the way that they have. Because the town council will listen to proposals in advance of the receipt of the planning application and will carry out the consultation. That's what we wanted. We wanted to hear people's views before it got to a stage where you've got a planning application in front of you and boundaries are drawn. Thank you.
And you all know about that,
I'm Barry James. I've got an observation, one that you may not be aware of, or you don't seem to be aware of. Brett's have actually admitted they lose around 5 tonnes of cement a year blown into the water.
No, 6 to 8 weeks.
Which I find a little difficult to understand when you actually want to put your aggregate in piles before you start building, how much of that will end up all over Ramsgate. For those that don't know, whether it's relevant is entirely up to you to decide, but the O'Regan Group have chosen 2 planning consultants that used to be ex-TDC planning officers. Now, as they say, they no longer work for Thanet District Council. Officially. But it does make me wonder why they were chosen amongst all the other planning consultants in the country. And 2, something that was skipped across right at the start of this meeting. Could somebody explain to me the planning process and what on your application that may come forward needs planning permission and what doesn't need planning permission? Because personally, I think everything you want to do needs putting through the proper planning process, not some and others. Secondly, if you're going to put things through the planning process, then you need to have a serious think about whether the residents of Ramsgate will actually rise up and let you. One minor point, a little bit, but they talked about Ramsgate sand. It's Ramsgate sand that they stole to build the bloody port in the first place.
Can I just answer the question of the employment of these 2 gentlemen? Okay? That's nothing to do with you. Right. We employ them because they are local gentlemen. They know you people. They are local gentlemen. They have knowledge of the local area. Yes, there are hundreds and thousands of consultants all over the country. What good would a man from Newcastle, Carlisle, or I don't know, in Wales, be able to do here? These 2 gentlemen can't.
How much are they being paid?
Can we have a bit of quiet, please?
Quiet! Malcolm!
Only the ones who have the mic can talk, please.
Hello, that's better. There's a number of points. First one, does this have permitted development rights? If so, when did TDC go to the Crown to change what was agreed in the first place for it to be a port? The sand from the main beach lies underneath there, which means the rigs going in are going to damage it, which means are we, the taxpayers, going to put another, pay for another bill like the panels for Pleasure Armour? There's another port just up the road called Richborough, and I don't think that's in there. And it's being classed as a brownfield site. There's a suggestion about 500 metres from the housing. Salt spray goes inland by as much as 8 kilometres. Right? 8 kilometres. So if you think that 5 tonnes is a large amount, think what will be blown inland. Some of these have different pHs. Some are acid, some are alkaline.
Would you put a large multi-million-pound yacht in a harbour knowing that acid etching is going to take place? The jobs mentioned in here will be nothing with the losses because the people will not want to come here.
Yeah.
There are deep divisions in here, and a marina village is better for all of us with more employable jobs than a second-rate open toilet block clinker built on that side.
Just a quick question about jobs. We all want more jobs in Thanet, that's absolutely clear, and nobody would argue against that. Are these jobs going to be people brought into the area? Are they intended to be local people that we trained up? Is there going to be apprenticeships linked to it? Can we have some kind of visual impact when you argue if this is going to progress any further? Can we make sure that we have some kind of visual impact of what it's going to do to the vistas from all around the harbour, the smells that are going to be produced? I think there's lots and lots of questions. I think it's highly, highly undesirable. And just put yourself in the situation, once that mess the Pleasure Arm is at the moment is sorted out, hopefully, and we have some desirable properties there, do you think anybody who's going to spend any serious money wants to sit outside on a balcony and look out over an industrial plant with all the smells and aromas and dust and everything else? As somebody that's hopefully trying to promote Ramsgate as a world-class harbour marina destination with all the opportunities that brings with it, this would be a totally, totally mad decision to go anywhere near this.
First of all, we seem to have a thing about smells and everything else. Well, there is no smell coming from this operation. Secondly, the port area that we're getting involved in is the commercial port area, and it's designated as such. It is not a harbour. It is not. No, it is not.
Shush! Let him speak!
I'll let the councillors answer that question regarding the designation of the port area. Well, I think the councillors might look differently from the legal point. The other question that was raised, if I can just finish off, please. Thank you. Was the question of employment. Yes, local employment. There's no point in trying to import people from other areas. Local people are the right people to have.
Question back, please. Question back, young lady. Don't take photographs, please.
Don't you think this is just putting more pollution in the air? That we don't need just some more chemical stuff. Like it's just silly. We don't need pollution. We don't need to just die from something that's silly. We don't need this.
There are a couple of points that came up. Malcolm Colby raised the issue of permitted development rights. There's a thing called the General Permitted Development Order, which gives rights for certain development to be undertaken in ports without the need for planning permission. Now that is something which would have to be determined by Thanet District Council planning officers. Well, it would have to be determined by Thanet District Council planning officers on the basis of planning law, and they would look to see if you're transporting goods, etc., through a port, then obviously you don't need permission for it. And then you have to decide when it ceases to be transportation. Now, clearly, the block making is a manufacturing practice and would require planning permission. It would have to be considered in the context of the port policy. In terms of pollution, yes, the young lady's right that there mustn't be any pollution. And as part of the process like this, should the O'Regan group decide to proceed to work up a detailed scheme, any planning application would have to be supported by an environmental statement. That statement would have to identify what the air quality is at the minute, what the water quality is at the minute, set baselines, look at what the potential implication of the scheme would be, and if there are identified concerns, say how those concerns would be met. That statement would then be passed on to the council, to the Environment Agency, to Natural England and other bodies, and it would be down to them to assess whether they considered that all the environmental issues had been satisfactorily dealt with.
John Billy, Master Mariner. Bearing in mind that most of the waste timber and spoil is going to come from the London area, and bearing in mind that some of that spoil will be cleaned and returned to Cliff on the River Thames, surely the ideal place for this would be Medway Ports. Why doesn't this company go there? Thank you.
Well, economically on the Isle of Grain, it just wouldn't work, okay, because of the cost that they want for rent, you'd be surprised.